Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second part of section 8.6, Solving Quadratic Equations. First, we're going to begin today's lesson with a little review of yesterday's stuff. Please remember that we want to multiply up to this guy, and we want to add to this guy. And we want to multiply to a negative number, but we want to add up to a positive number. So that tells me that I need a positive and a negative to get a negative number when I multiply, but the positive number needs to be bigger than the negative number because I have this plus sign right here. So let's try it and find our factors of negative 18. So since my positive has to be bigger than my negative, I'm going to have to say negative 1 and 18. When you add these two guys up, they give you 17, so that doesn't work. Then let's go on to negative 2 and 9. You add these guys up, that gives you 7. So that does not work. Then we try negative 3 and 6. They add up to 3. Well, wait a second, that's what we're looking for. So these two guys are our factors. And so then we just bring down our parentheses, x minus 3, and then take that times x plus 6. Together, these guys add up to a positive 3, but they multiply to a negative 18, so we found our factors for number 1. Now with today's stuff, we're going to add a little something extra onto that. Right now, with number 2, we have z squared minus 3z minus 70 equals 0. Right now we're solving for z when you see that equals 0. So now I still want to find factors of negative 70 that add up to negative 3. Well, since I know that I have to multiply to negative 70 and add up to a negative, I know that my negative number has to be bigger than my positive one. So I'm going to start with 1 and negative 70 as I'm moving right down the line. That adds up to negative 69, so we're not even close. Then I go 2 and negative 35. That adds up to be negative 33. Then I'm moving down the line to 7 and negative 10. That adds up to a negative 3. Hey, that's what we're looking for. So now I'm going to put these two factors in the parentheses. So I go z plus 7 and z minus 10. And now, though, here's where it changes just a touch. It equals 0. And now remember from a couple lessons ago where we have this zero product property. So now we have z plus 7 equals 0. And we also have z minus 10 equals 0. And now we're solving for z. So here in this guy, z would equal a negative 7 because I subtract the z over. But in my green equation, I'm going to add the 10 over, so z equals 10. So my two solutions are z equals 10 and z equals a negative 7. Now look at number 3. Here we have x squared plus 2x equals 15. We are still solving for x, but notice what it equals. It does not equal 0. We have to get these equations, what we are solving, to equaling 0. Whenever you have an x squared in there, and an x, we have to get them to equal 0. Well, this does not equal 0, so what do we have to do? We have to subtract the 15 over to the other side, right? And now please note that this is not any like terms, so we have x squared plus 2x minus 15, and now it equals 0. Since it equals 0, we are now ready to solve. We need factors of negative 15 that add up to 2. So let's move down the list. We have a negative number. They multiply to a negative, but they add up to a positive. So I know that the negative number has to be bigger than my negative number has to be smaller than my positive number. So we try negative 1 and 15. That adds up to 14, so that doesn't do us any good. Next factor of 15 is negative 3 and 5. What do they add up to? They add up to a positive 2. Exactly what we were looking for. So now let's go ahead and factor this guy right here. So we factor it to be x minus 3 x plus 5, and that whole thing equals 0. So now you can separate them and saying x minus 3 equals 0. And what else? We have x plus 5 equals 0. So here we have x equals a negative 5 and x equals a positive 3 because we added it over when we were solving for x. Right? So we have our two answers, x equals 3 and x equals negative 5. Let's try one more example. For number 4, we have h squared plus 48 equals 16h. Well, does it equal 0? It does not equal 0, correct? So what do we have to do? I have to subtract the 16h over to the other side. So I subtract the 16h over here. So now our new equation is h squared plus 48 minus 16h equals 0. Well, do I want this negative 16h here? No, I do not, because we're not used to seeing it like that. I want to put this guy right in the middle. I want to have my powers in descending order. So I have h squared minus 16h plus 48 equals 0. Notice how I didn't change the sign. I just switched these two numbers because this sign, this negative, belongs to the 16h and this positive belongs to the 48. So I just switched them. Now, we need multiples that multiply to 48 and then add up to a negative 16. So if you don't like the table, you can just put your number 48. Since it's a positive number, it adds up to a negative. I know that both of my numbers have to be negative because a negative times a negative is positive, and they're going to add up to be a negative. So let's try it. Negative 2 and negative 24. That adds up to be negative 26. That doesn't do us any good. How about the next one? Negative 3 and negative 16. That adds up. Well, we have a negative 16, but we're adding a negative 3 to it, so that adds up to a negative 19. Keep going. Negative 4, negative 12. That adds up to be negative 16. Look, we have a winner, so now we can go ahead and factor this. So it's h minus 4, and then times h minus 12, and that equals 0. Since it equals 0, we are not quite done. We have this h minus 4. Using the zero product property, h minus 4 equals 0. Then we have h minus 12, and that also equals 0. So now we're solving. H equals 12 here, and then in my green guy, h equals a positive 4 because we added it back over, right? So today's lesson, you're going to have a lot of problems with two answers. You might only have one, but you're going to have a lot of problems with two answers. So let's try our final problem, and it's everybody's favorite word problem. First, let's take a peek at what it says and see if we can decipher what it means. So it says that Ling is designing a poster. The top of the poster is 4 inches long. So since the top of the poster is 4 inches long, I'm going to put that down right here. So it's already 4 inches. The rest of the poster is 2 inches longer than the width. The rest of the poster is 2 inches longer than the width. What does that mean? Well, this is the side that they're talking about. It's 2 inches longer than the width. Well, let's say the width is W. How can you represent 2 inches longer? Well, how about plus 2? Now, it says if the poster requires 616 square inches of poster board, find the width of the poster. Okay, so we are asked to find this guy. And what is this guy? That guy is the width, right? So I'm just going to leave it W. Now, what do we have to do? We are given, what are we given? If the poster board requires 616 square inches, what is that? Square inches. Square inches tells us that it is the area. And so the area of this rectangle equals 616. Well, now, since this is the area of a rectangle, what's the area of a rectangle equal? the area of a rectangle is length times width, and that's going to equal 616. Okay, awesome. Well, now, what's my length? My length is these two guys, right? I have to start up here and add all of this together, so I come up with W plus 6, right? When I add the 4 to the 2, I get W plus 6. So now my length is, and I'm going to write W plus 6 is my length, so we have W plus 6, and now that's going in for my L, and then we have this W down here, which stands for my width, and that all equals 616. Well, now what do we have to do with this? We have to multiply this through, just like what you would think you would have to do, multiply it through to get W squared plus 6W equals 616. Does this equal 0? No, it does not. All we have to do now is solve, so it doesn't equal 0, so we have to subtract it over to the other side, so it's W squared plus 6W minus 616, and I'm going to move this out of our way here. And now all we have to do is to solve this guy for 0 once I finish writing equals 0. So now we have to factor it. Remember that we need factors that multiply to a negative 616 and add up to 6. Now we could go through some factors here all day, but I'm just going to let you know that the factors that we're looking for is negative 22 and a positive 28 because they add up to a positive 6. So let's go ahead and solve this mess. Now we have a W minus 22 times a W plus 28, and that equals 0. Solving for this, now we have W equals from here 22, W equals from here a negative 28, right? So now we have our two answers. But can a width be a negative number? No, a width can never be a negative number, so the only answer that we're left with is 22. So our width has to be 22, and 22 what? Our width is 22 inches. And that does it for section 8.6, Solving Quadratic Equations, Part 2. Good day.